Day two. In day two, we learned about why digital transformations fail and what are some of the best practices to actually not fail, or how do you set yourself up for success. And we had a really good guest speaker, Maeve, which we will go into. But there's this reference to this really good book, Why Digital Transformations Fail by Tony Saldana. And within the book, there is a really detailed PNG case study. And so we we got the benefit to get the summary, and there are 5 learnings of why digital transformations fail from this book. The first is, if you don't have the highest buy-in from, let's say, the CEO of your company or the general manager, then most likely you will not get the support. So you need buy-in. So that's the biggest reason. Number 2 is you really need those areas to have a 10x impact. Your transformation journey should really pay off in a pretty big way. It shouldn't be that you do this, you put a large effort, but the payoff isn't that high. It's this marginal benefit. Then that is not gonna work. People will not switch products and offerings or habits if it's a marginal improvement. So it has to be a 10x idea. So what you do is you look at 10 different ideas that your top ideas, and try to boil it down to 5, narrow it down to 5, and then 4. Maybe those 4 are 2x ideas, but then pick one out of the 10 which is actually a 10x idea. You'll have to really focus on fewer things, fewer battles that you would want to fight. Don't try to invest in everything. It's not going to work. The 10x ideas are rare, and you'd want to know that those are indeed the high paying ideas. So if you are in a team or a product delivering things and that actually doesn't have a 10x, even if you put in all the effort, get the highest buy-in and all of that, it's not gonna make the difference to the bottom line. So it has to be a truly, genuinely 10x idea. Third thing that is potentially missing if you're trying to get a disruptive or even a competitive transformation going is you're not showing that your win is a clear keystone win. By this, what the author means is that the win is actually working, and that there's no ambiguity that, hey, this is working. So you have to be able to frame your win so that everyone is excited and understands that this is working. Same definition, right? So it has to be a keystone win. It's a critical, everyone understands and everyone gets it. Fourth, if your UX is clunky, then it's pretty hard. You have to have a win in a transformation which fundamentally has a step up improvement and it's easy to use. Fifth, if you have a one-off improvement and even if it's a 10x, even if it doesn't have a path towards ongoing innovation, then there is no chance that that will actually win, because it'll fade off. So those are the 5 things, learnings from that book, which was pretty neat that she summarized for us. And these 4 areas, right, for competitive transformation that we're learning in this course, UX is very important. Data is very important, right? And we are going to learn in the next day 3, how UX and data. It's all focused on UX and data. And after that, day 4 and 5, we're going to learn about recommendation engine using virality and using social to activate your audiences and loyalty in your audiences, because people and their behavior have changed. They start by solving problems by going online, getting recommendations, talking to their friends, using ratings, using social media. So that's where we have to start. That's where we have to start our digital innovation, and we have to play where people are. It was a good example. Even the best fishermen will not be able to fish if there is no fish in that area, right? So you have to go where the fish is to fish, right? So really good learning. And it's important for us to have these 5 ingredients, otherwise things don't take off, right? You might have some win, but it doesn't take off, right? Example, Dropbox. So you see her, look at how pretty interactive her teaching is. She's actually in the camera explaining on a virtual whiteboard and projecting her screen. And she's showing graphs, she's showing videos, she's showing animations and slide deck, and that's pretty amazing. And so she's showing here how in Google Trends, which is a really good tip that I learned, how Dropbox accelerated and took off, but then plateaued, and then Google Drive really took off, right? So that was a really good way for us to learn like how things take off. And these are the 5 ingredients. Buy-in, you need that buy-in. Keystone win, you need the UX to be awesome. It has to be indeed a 10x and an incremental path towards progress. So that was really amazing, isn't it? And people like Dropbox specifically as to why Dropbox took off. It was because it was free. It had that virality in which you could get more storage if some of your friends accepted, and they didn't charge. Like only 4% of their current users actually pay. 96 don't, but these 4% actually support. So the way and when they charge is very important. And the UX was pretty easy. They really automated how to get it. Same with Zoom, right? We saw how Zoom started off with free. Super easy, best quality, target everyone, right? You don't have to log in. They used influence through the podcast at Masters of Scale, through advertising. They built awareness. They had unique value propositions, and they were all over the place when it comes to making sure that the people that they're targeting were aware of the work that they were doing, and then the quality of the product was just so good that it just worked all the time. Always worked. And when you start charging for like things like Zoom, Dropbox, Zoom charges once you go beyond certain minutes, like 30 minutes, and and Dropbox charges beyond certain storage space, and they charge when they know that the product is 10x better and when the users will not switch. Super critical for you to charge when you're really adding a lot of value. So a lot of these companies, as long as they innovate, they're going to continue to win. If they don't, doomsday. So Maeve Gorman, she is a transformation, digital transformation point of contact at healthcare firm VHI Ireland. She's the person who was hired, and she shared really good insights. She shared how she was able to, start it off from scratch. This company had legacy business of insurance, had no idea how they would introduce digital, forget transformation. And so she was the one who was hired to be the person for digital transformation. So she started off sharing her stories as to how she built her influence, and with very quick wins in the beginning with social media presence, built small wins that proved ROI in everything that she did. And she shared how she could get traffic to the system and how she could get a lot of people in the door, but if the experience is poor, product's buggy, it's not going to work, right? So she actually made business cases by writing strategy papers, send it out to high profile people to tell them like how her idea can help improve the business or the bottleneck by 10x. Eventually made a case after persisting for many years to build a permanent team, mobile apps first, and then eventually a team in Google Analytics, social media management, advertising. So she showed how she built on that incremental wins. The key insight was how she persisted, how she was data driven, how she was using all of these aspects that we're learning in the course around gamification, loyalty building, engagement over many years, right? And how she used the voice of the customer to show and convince the executives like, hey, look, these anecdotes, these video clips are telling you that these are pain points that the customers are facing. And she built those relationships with those customers. She actually got those customers to be part of their team. So they could even acknowledge how the work that they were doing was hard, and then they had empathy built for each other. And so she built the case. Small wins, improvement showed results, build a team, continue to grow the team, got the customers to be part of it. And then she did like feedback surveys and really communicated progress, right? So a lot of things to learn from her. Amazing learning in terms of how she did what she did, and built a team of experts around her. And whenever the data was not on her side, she just completely trusted the data, right? And trusted the team around her. So a lot of learnings from Maeve. Amazing insights she shared from her personal career to introduce this transformation. Day 3, we're going to learn about UX and data. Day 3 is super critical, right? We learned about why it fails in day 2 and what are the best practices to learn from the book and also from a real life person. Now we're going to learn about like the two key pillars, UX and data. And UX is super critical. If your product is not 10x better, it's going to be very hard for it to be disruptive. It has to get the job done 10x better for people to move. Less number of steps, easy to use, intuitive to the core. And there are 2 books I would recommend: Hooked and then Don't Make Me Think. Really good books being referred every day. So a lot of good reading to do after the course. So there are 4 points that the book Hooked shared, which I think were really insightful. I'll share briefly. It's about like, how do you make products that stick, that get adoption, and then they get that hockey stick, like really take off, right? The product needs to have a trigger, and it needs to be at the source of the trigger. Like if people are searching for a problem, then you need to have the product that has Google paid media, because Google has a lot of search traffic. And then you need to understand the action that people take, which is the BMAT: behavior, motivation, ability, and trigger. So there's a trigger behind every action that people take, but they have to have the ability to take that action, meaning we should be playing where they are looking for the result or the answer, and they should have the motivation to actually get the solution that they're looking for, right? And so many examples were given as to why Fortnite was powerful and it took off, right? And how freeness and getting people hooked to the fact that they really want your products. Interesting aspects of the brain, how it works. Really good insights shared in this book. Also, another reference to Robert Cialdini, Influence, was a good book. Using variable rewards make people come again and again. Like if you give rewards that are certain, then I don't think you will get people to come back as much. Certain rewards don't get people to come back as much because they know when they come back, they'll get the reward. But if it's a variable reward, then it builds this uncertainty. And if you get more reward, like the gambler who's trying to use the slot machine, they'll actually use that slot machine more. The buttons that they'll click are more because there's variable rewards. And a lot of this is psychology, right? Like how do people at Facebook make Instagram so addictive that it keeps them coming over and over? How do you get your content creators to create content over and over? Variable reward. That's the answer. And finally, the 4th piece is, after you have a certain level of investment into anything, you have a skin in the game. You actually don't want to back off. Like let's say you built your Gmail with 10 years of history of using Gmail of a specific address. You will not just in a split second go out and say, hey, I want a new email address. It'll take a lot of time and effort. So once you get invested into using something, even your keyboard for that matter, there may be better keyboards available, but the habit is very hard to switch. So these psychological things help us to actually build products that people want to use. Remember, a lot of this also questions ethics, like how and what you build and who would you want it to use it. Like, would you want your kid to use the product that you build? If the answer to that is yes, there's some ethics behind it that can support it, then go for it. If not, I think it's a good barometer that I think I would want to use. And so we went through UX, how to build UX that are so good that it hooks you, right? And remembering the ethics part is important. And then the second part is the data part. Remember, those are the two key pillars from this day. How do we use data so that it actually empowers us to make better decisions? Using data and data literacy is a very hard thing to do. So Airbnb was an example that we studied in detail. I think way too much detail. I think she spent way too much time than it deserves, but the amount of detail was good. Maybe I was bored because I knew a lot of what she was talking about. I have gone through this at work over and over again, and I'm guessing a lot of people would have been bored to death as to why is this so important and why, and they might not even understand a lot of these things that were discussed in the class. I understood everything, but I was bored. I was like, can I hit a 10x button and go fast through this 2 hours of grilling into understanding this this thing that Airbnb's put up? But it's really important. So from an important standpoint, it's good. For me personally, I knew all of it, so I was like, let's go quickly. But there are 4 pillars to using data. The first one is data literacy, right? Like, do you even know how to read the data that you have or access the data that you have, right? So, and is the data that you're accessing the truthful data, meaning does it have a full picture? Does it protect the right people from accessing it? And what kind of tools you use? So data access and data tools are the foundations. And knowing what data to query, how to query it, how to ask the right questions so that the data can answer it, how to understand statistics and its use here in data analysis, different querying languages, different storage technologies, different visualization tools, different ways to interpret the experiments that you run. A lot of this requires a lot of learning. So she tried to cover a lot, but I feel that it gives an overview, but deserves a lot more insights into being data savvy. Like, how do you make data driven decisions that are right? So Maeve told us that when she saw that the data said otherwise, she just moved around and moved on. But that's important. So spending a lot more time in this area would be useful. So understanding how to use the data, where to store it, where should you store it locally, should you store it in the cloud, what kind of access you build, who queries it, many things to understand around data and usage of data. But if you do that well, then you will build the right algorithms that use your data to actually build those personalized experience. So this area is huge, but I think she did a fantastic job giving an overview. But my guess is that a lot of people would have understood maybe 50% or 60% of it. But this deserves a lot more insights. But very important area, UX and data. Finally, the quality of speaker just keeps getting better and better and better. Like, I was amazed. Like the kind of people she brought in. Daniel was another guy who currently works at IAB Europe. So it's an advertisement space, right? And he shared so many interesting things around like big data, the myths around it, and how the advertising industry is in a constant battle of different IDs and different ID solutions, and how they're trying to ultra target, and how these companies who actually store data on the cloud, how much they are charged, how browsers and vendors, they implement these IDs and ID formats, and how these W3Cs and browser vendors and all of them come together to actually build and support these ID solutions. Talked about third-party cookies and the change to the latest iOS 14.5 and how it impacts the ads ecosystem in a pretty big way. So a lot of really interesting things that we learned around data storage. And he shared a really good book, which was this Madison Avenue Manslaughter. It's an insight view of fee-cutting clients, profit-hungry owners, and declining ad agencies. So a lot of interesting things to read and understand here. And he shared about this different types of markets: the Google internet, the Facebook internet, Amazon internet, and then these challenger internets, which are Shopify, Pinterest, Snapchat, TikTok, and many more, and how these all like work with each other. They're all walled gardens. And then there are these the open web, the European Commission, and so these, who has the data has the oil that was of the last century, right? Like if you have data, and if you can have clear data, and if you can identify who those people are, then you can use that data in your algorithms to actually give better personalized recommendations, advertisements, and so many things that are important that drive a lot of these businesses like Amazon, Facebook, and Google. A lot of them have huge ads revenue and presence. So first party data, Snowflake, and it's was another area that we discussed on how we have data clean rooms, how cloud companies, it's super more important for them to have data governance, various types of tools that he uses in his day-to-day, like Power BI. He uses R in a pretty big way. So a lot of really good learnings from him on day 3. Yeah. So we will go into day 4 and day 5 and conclude next.